Good morning, everyone. I hope y'all have been having a great week. And it's Thursday, so it's almost the weekend. But today we are going to be doing a devotional on Matthew 9. So if you could go ahead and turn there and read through the passage so we can get started. So today, I'm not necessarily going to go in order, so I'm sorry. But I've grouped some of these sections together because I think they show us kind of the same idea. So the first section, Jesus heals a paralyzed man. So this man is brought to Jesus by 4 of his friends, and the same story is in Mark 2, and it gives us these details of this man being lowered through the roof of the house in order to get to Jesus. And when Jesus sees them, he sees the faith of these 4 friends. They were very determined to get their friend to Jesus to be healed, and they had great faith that Jesus could do it, and he does. And then if you go down to verse 18, there's this man, a ruler, who his daughter has just died. And he comes to Jesus, and he has faith that if Jesus could just lay his hand on her, that he could raise her from the dead. So Jesus is on his way to this man's house, and there's this woman who has been sick for 12 years. And she believes that if she could just touch the edge of Jesus' clothes, that then she would be healed. And so she does, and it heals her. And there's nothing special about touching Jesus' clothes. There's nothing magical about his clothes, but it was the faith that she had that caused her to be healed. And Jesus tells her, "Take heart, daughter, your faith has made you well." So then Jesus gets to this man's house, and everyone is there. They're mourning her death. And Jesus comes in and he tells them that she's not dead, she's just sleeping. And they laugh at him. But he takes this girl's hand, and she rises up out of the bed alive. And here, it wasn't even her own faith, just like in the first story, but it was her father's faith that saved her. And then next, Jesus heals 2 blind men. So they followed him into this house. They were very determined to be with him, and he asked them if they really believe that he can heal them. And they say yes, and Jesus says to them, "According to your faith be it done to you." And then they are healed. So all throughout here we see people are being healed, but it's not because of who they are or what they've done. We have a paralyzed man and 2 blind men, so they might have been beggars because they wouldn't have been able to work. And then we have the daughter of a rich and powerful man. And then this woman, she would have been considered unclean because of this illness that she had. So just a variety of different people, a variety of statuses. But that's not what matters. What matters is that all of them had faith. Or not even their own faith, but someone near to them had faith. And that is what saved them. That is what changed their lives. So we're going to jump back over to verse 9. And this is where Jesus calls Matthew to be his disciple. And so previously, Matthew was a tax collector. And tax collectors were very hated people. They were known for taking more money than they needed to and putting that money directly into their own pockets. So they were thieves. And Jesus comes to Matthew and tells him to follow him, and he does. And Matthew prepares a feast for Jesus, and there are other tax collectors there. And it says Jesus is reclining at the table with tax collectors and sinners. And the Pharisees see this, and they ask Jesus' other disciples why he's doing this. The Pharisees thought they were more righteous and kind of better than everyone else, and they would never do something like eat with tax collectors. But Jesus hears, and he answers, and he says in verse 12, But those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice, for I came not to call the righteous, but sinners. So he's not saying that there are righteous people on earth who don't need Jesus to save them. Everyone needs salvation, and everyone is sick because of sin, but not everyone realizes this. But it is only by realizing your own sin, confessing it, and confessing your need to be saved by Jesus, then you receive salvation through him. And so in the next section, we're going to see Jesus answer another question. And this one's about fasting. So one of John's disciples asks why Jesus' disciples do not fast. And Jesus' answer in verse 15 says, "Can the wedding guests mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast." So there are a couple reasons in the Bible why people would fast. And so the first one we're going to look at is to mourn. And there's an example of this in 2 Samuel where David is fasting when Saul dies. And so Jesus says, how can you mourn while the bridegroom is with you? And so he here is the bridegroom, and he is here on earth in the flesh with them. And so this is a time to be rejoicing, to be excited, and not to mourn. And then another reason why people might fast is to draw near to God. But again, Jesus is here with them. They can talk to him. They can ask him questions. They can follow him. They don't need to fast in order to draw near to God. But Jesus says there is a time when he will no longer be with them. The bridegroom will be taken away, and that is the time where they can mourn. That is a time where they will need to fast again in order to draw near to God. And then we're going to jump over to verse 32. So here Jesus is healing a mute man. And I didn't group this with the other stories of Jesus healing because it's a little different. But this man is possessed by a demon, and this demon has made him mute. So this man would have been considered unhealable, because when people would cast out demons, kind of their first step would be to learn the demon's name. They would try to get the person who is possessed to tell them the demon's name. But because this man had been made mute, that was impossible to do. But Jesus comes and he casts the demon out, and the man speaks again. So he's just done this thing that was considered impossible. And the Pharisees see them do this. And their response is, they say, he casts out demons by the prince of demons. So they've just seen him perform this miracle, and other people throughout this chapter, they've had faith in Jesus because of his miracles. But the Pharisees, they have an opposite reaction. They accuse Jesus of being able to do these things not because his power and authority comes from God, but because they say he is a servant of the devil. And so they're just continuing to harden their hearts against him, and they will continue to do that throughout the rest of his ministry. And then this last section, it is called "The Harvest is Plentiful, the Laborers Are Few." So Jesus goes through these cities and he's healing everyone. He heals every illness, every affliction. And then it says he turns to look at the crowds and he has compassion for them. And he's not having compassion on them because they're sick and hurting, because he has healed all of them, but because they're spiritually lost. He compares them to sheep without a shepherd. And that is still very true today. There are many people who have probably heard of Jesus, who are curious about Jesus, just like these people here were. but they need someone to guide them. Jesus says that the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. There are people who are willing to give their life to Christ, but there need to be, Christ followers who are willing to put in the hard work and to care for these people and to show them how Christ has changed their own life. Because as we've seen throughout this chapter, your faith does change your life. These people that Jesus healed, they weren't just physically changed, their whole lives were changed because of the faith that they had. And like the girl, she got her whole entire life back. And not even because of her own faith, but just her father's faith, because it's so powerful. And so I hope that you would apply these things to your own life, and just everything that we've looked at in this chapter today. So I hope you enjoyed this devotional, and that you'll be back tomorrow to learn about Matthew 10.